This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Selling a little or a lot? Do your thing however you cha-ching with Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/offer23.
The holidays are coming. Find a gift for someone special with jewelry from Blue Nile. Right now, Blue Nile is offering special Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. Save up to 50% on the season's most stunning trends. Blue Nile offers an endless selection of bold gold styles, gemstone jewelry, and classic diamond pieces. And now, for a limited time, get 36 months special financing on minimum purchases of $1,000. Restrictions apply. See BlueNile.com for details. That's BlueNile.com.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of our Talk is Cheap Giants and Jets Now podcast from NJ Advanced Media, the Star Ledger, and NJ.com. It is Tuesday evening right now. Daryl Slater here, Andy Vasquez with me. Obviously not in the same room. He's about 40 minutes away where he lives. I'm hanging out at my house, and we are discussing, obviously, all things Jets and Giants. As we mentioned last week, we're kind of pivoting the format of this podcast for the stretch run of what is obviously a lost Giants season and has been for some time, and now things spiraling in that direction toward lost status, I guess, for the Jets. The Jets, of course, just got defeated by the Bills late Sunday afternoon, 32-6, an absolute disaster offensively yet again in Orchard Park, this time for the Jets, who are now 4-6, losers of 3 straight, and they can't do anything on offense. They just benched Zach Wilson for the great Tim Boyle. So the big Black Friday game coming up for the Jets, 3:00 at home against the Dolphins. Yeah, let's be honest, they're losing that game. As for the Giants, 3-8. Tommy DeVito got a win and hurt the Giants draft position. They're now 5th in the draft order, down from 2nd. Giants beat Washington, 31-19 this past Sunday, and so stops the bleeding a little bit for Brian Daboll's team. They have a really interesting game coming up this week against the Patriots, but mainly because it's a fascinating one for draft position. Patriots right now coming off their bye, they're 2-8 and they're 3rd in the draft order. So, and then the Giants are off in week 13, and then 5 games to go after that. So what we'll do here is we'll talk, I guess, quite a bit about future stuff, because again, that's what it's been about for the Giants for some time, and now what it'll be about for the Jets. So, Andy, how you doing, man?
Great. Yeah. Had a nice, easy trip back from Western New York. And it seems like it's a rite of passage every Jets season for just to, things to get rough. And it certainly has happened earlier than anyone expected. And all this talk about Aaron Rodgers returning seems moot, I guess is the best way to put it. It's just not happening. So, I mean, look, he's going to keep the dream alive, but it was always unrealistic and ridiculous to think that Aaron Rodgers was going to save this season after he tore his Achilles. It was a little bit ridiculous to think that signing Aaron Rodgers would fix everything, although you could see how it could have worked out a lot better than this, that's for sure. But still, it's not, a 40-year-old, as good as Aaron Rodgers is, a 40-year-old fixing every problem within your organization was a fantasy. And hey, here we are, where that fantasy is being proven as such. So, yeah, it's time to look forward. I mean, I think the Jets would tell you that it's all, still right there for them. And yeah, I guess if they can go on an unlikely run with Tim Boyle, it is all still in front of them. But I mean, especially the way they lost to the Bills the other night, and now do not control that tiebreaker within the division against the only team they've beaten the division so far. Not a good way to get to the playoffs for the first time in 13 years. And it sure looks like that streak, which is somehow the longest in Jets franchise history of 12 years, is about to become 13. So a lot of interesting dynamic, because somehow because of the way it's all fallen, Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, who I think would be candidates to get fired before the end of the season in any other season, are not at this point candidates to get fired before the end of the season or even after it because of the whole Aaron Rodgers things. But I gotta say, like they're in dangerous territory now because if they lose the rest of the games, which is not out of the question, you start looking at these matchups. I mean, Atlanta's a chance, the Commanders are a chance at a victory, but outside of that, there's no locks. That's 10 in a row to end the season after 6 in a row last year. And how do you go into next year, even with Aaron Rodgers, without making some sort of change? So, yeah, it's getting late early in Forum Park, and sure, they can talk about the season not technically being over, but they better find a way to win a game soon, because if they don't, I don't see how there aren't some sort of long-term consequences for that.
Yeah, so obviously this was a year that the Jets were supposed to climb a couple rungs, get closer to whatever their ceiling would be. In their progress, they haven't had any rungs climbed toward that ceiling. So look, the bottom line here is the Jets. We're talking about Jets and Giants, so we try to intersect this a little bit. So the Jets obviously beat the Eagles, and then they go to the bye, and then they get gifted a win by the Giants in like the ultimate gift fashion. A total gag job by the Giants. We all know it. And then the next 3 weeks, just an absolute offensive, egg laying against the Chargers.
Winnable games too. Yeah, winnable games, especially the first two.
Yeah, for sure. Chargers, Raiders, Bills 0-3 in that stretch. And so now they bench Zach Wilson, who is straight to the toaster, and he's gone. He's never going to, barring something crazy, he's finished with the Jets. So we know for sure the one.
Not even active. Yeah, not even active this week. He'll be the backup, the third string, one of the few teams, the only team other than the Saints that has used that this year. The emergency third quarterback, yeah.
So basically, yeah, look, he's done. He's finished. I mean, it was a total bust of a pick, an absolute awful pick, and by Joe Douglas, the guy who's still the GM. And that goes to show it kind of. I think we can get to it in a little bit, but that's because I wrote about it for today. Like how bummed should the Giants be about maybe missing out on Caleb Williams? And we know the guy the Jets missed out on, Trevor Lawrence, in 2021, because the Jets won 2 games late in the year and they settled for Zach Wilson, who has been terrible. And so that's an example right there. Another one, of course, Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin in 2012. There haven't been a lot of those, but those are a couple right there. So yeah, Zach Wilson finished with the Jets for all. He will not be the backup next year. Now, when you talk about other changes, I mean, look, you're going to roll with Tim Boyle. Let's say Rodgers has this like pipe dream of coming back December 24th against Commanders in Week 16. The Jets still have 4 games between now and then: Dolphins, Falcons, Texans, Dolphins. They could very easy. I think at best, they go 1-3 during that stretch.
I think they got the Falcons. You said Falcons, right? Sorry.
Yeah, Dolphins, Falcons, Texans.
Yeah, sorry.
So,
a lot of similar sounding names.
So I, at best 1-3. So then it becomes like Aaron Rodgers is running the show. He's calling the shots. Like, they cast their lot with this guy and they let him make every decision under the sun. So of course he's going to want his caddy Nathaniel Hackett back as the OC next year in title only, because we know Rodgers will be calling the plays essentially. And what has Saleh shown you? I mean, come on. Who are these people to think that this guy is like a great coach? I mean, he seems like a good motivator, a very good defensive coach. 15-29 through 2+ seasons. He would be out in his keister if it wasn't for Rodgers wanting the consistency, because you're not firing the head coach and telling the new head coach, oh, by the way, you have to keep this bum Nathaniel Hackett, your OC. So that's not happening. So and
that is it. That is it right there. That is the whole issue.
They got a mulligan on this season because of what happened with Rodgers. Now, we all wrote it off the opener. There's no way they could survive, but maybe they can because of their defense. And then there was all this like blips of hope, right? Because of the Eagles game, because of the Giants gifted them a win. They beat what at the time was a bad Bronco team in Denver, and they won the first game. So there were they played well against the Chiefs. But ultimately, what happened was what we all expected to happen. Zach Wilson was terrible. The offense was terrible. Nathaniel Hackett was inept, and they lost a bunch of games. They're 3-6 since the opener. Okay. So like it was what everybody expected. So I don't get this like whole idea that everyone's like shocked at Zach. Well, he's so terrible that they replaced him last year, benched him, and then traded for Rodgers. Like, so yeah, look, I mean, it's they're not in it. The season is over. they're not yet officially over like the Giants, but they have to think now. Well, I think that so what's on the table if they lose out, right? I mean, if they lose out and lose they've lost 3 so far, that would be 3 more, and then
It would be 10 in a row. It would be 10
in
in
a
a row
row.
if they lose out.
10
And
in a
because they
row
already
to
lost
finish
3 in a row, they have 7
4-13.
games left. I mean, I don't see how at some point, like Salah, the fan base is angry.
You can't fire the
And
OC.
yeah, and so at some point it's going to be like Salah and Douglas are going to decide, like, are they going to cater to Rodgers? They're going to do the right thing for the team, and that's the crime of this whole thing, is that they're wasting a good year from a defense that is good enough to allow them to play with anybody. I mean, the Eagles do have one loss this year, and it was not to the Jets offense, but to the Jets defense. That is a good defense, and they're not the 84 Bear, 80, 80, 85, 86 Bears like they wanted to say they were. But I know it's the 85 Bears. Sorry, it's just a lot of numbers floating around here. But they're not that team. But, I feel like they're a really good defense. They're good enough to play with anybody. And, yeah, they had a bad game against Buffalo. But, like, anybody who watched that game knows that the Jets offense wasn't going to score another touchdown after the one only reason they got a touchdown was because of an 18-yard pass on a fake punt. So I'm not going to kill them for having a game where they let go of the rope against a team that struggled. But at a certain point, like Salah, how do you maintain credibility in the locker room when you keep Nathaniel Hackett as the play caller?
Right.
And I'm not saying it's an easy situation for him or for Joe Douglas, because they made their bed with a guy and then you have the worst case scenario happen 4 plays into the season. But they do get paid a lot of money, and it's their job to do what's best for the franchise. And I mean, there has to be a way to like gently change play callers or something. You can't just navigate this season and drive it straight into the ground. And the fact that like they already have passed or failed the test, because the idea that Zach Wilson would have a season last year. I mean, anybody who was at that game on Thursday night before Christmas and saw Zach Wilson get booed off the field multiple times and then replaced by a practice squad quarterback who played better than him, and they still lost the game. Like, you don't come back from that. And then they're just like, yeah, well, we have the oldest quarterback in the league. He's 1 snap away from potential serious injury. We'll just put Zach right there, 1 snap away from coming right back in, as if the fans hadn't already been mostly out on him. Like, it's I have to say, like, the miracle of this season is that the kid can even function as a human being, let alone as a very below average quarterback, and doesn't drop the ball or isn't looking in the stands and screaming at fans who are saying terrible things to him all the time. I mean, he's more mature than I am. I can tell you that much.
Well,
so
I think the question then becomes, all right, so what could they do? Could they keep Hackett and promote Todd Downing, their passing game coordinator, to play caller, to the offensive coordinator job? Like, could you keep Hackett as your offensive coordinator? Okay, so to appease Rodgers. This is all about stroking the ego of, the self-appointed genius Rodgers, who, let me tell you, if they don't make the Super Bowl, I said this from the minute the trade went down, the trade is a failure. It's a failure if they don't make the Super Bowl, because they have just cast their lot with this guy and let him run the entire organization, basically. So how do they thread the needle, right? Is that a possibility, do you think?
I think you just quietly, you don't make an announcement about it, but you have them collaborate on play calls. I mean, I think sending Hackett to the booth, which was a change they made this last game, is probably a way of doing it. But like, yeah, there has to be a way to do it. Or as a coach, you take a stand and do what's right for the team. If you get fired, so be it, right? Like, at a certain point, like, these guys are so desperate to hang on to these jobs. It almost reminds you of like politicians who are so desperate to hang on to their jobs, they don't do their job.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, I think it's pretty obvious the way the situation has gone, and you'd like to see a coach, even if it's going to hurt his career at a certain place, do the right thing. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I think it's a tough spot, because I do think they could be pretty good next year with Rodgers, but you're also, betting on the defense being as good. And now they've gotten through 2 years where they've had pretty good injury luck on defense. And, it's just a lot to add up, a lot to factor in. And then you look at the bar, and if they had just, even if they had like a replacement level, like a average backup, it feels like they would have won some games that they haven't won. Like even look at Tommy DeVito. I mean, he's leading touchdown drives. He already has more touchdowns this season, I believe, passing touchdowns than Zach Wilson has. So it's not as if like, and he doesn't have Garrett Wilson, he doesn't have Brees Hall. I know Saquon helps, but the weapons are better around Zach Wilson. So it's not as if like they couldn't have found a way to stay in it without Rodgers. That's the craziest part about this. Like if you had a Tommy DeVito type player and given him an opportunity to have that job, where would the Jets be right now? I don't know. You've seen DeVito, you've seen Wilson. Tell me.
I think some of it too is the Giants have some issues with how they've run their offense, but a lot of it is personnel problems. Where I think with the Jets, you're talking about the coordinator is just in over his head.
Yes.
And so I think as we pivot a little bit to the Giants here, that 31-19 win on Sunday. Okay, good for Tommy DeVito getting that win. Fine. I think Brian Daboll needed that in the worst way. He needed a game where his team played with some pride, didn't come unglued. 6 games to go. They're going to lose both the games to the Eagles unless the Eagles rest starters in the finale. And quite frankly, they might lose that game anyway, with as good as the Eagles roster is. They have Packers, Saints, and Rams otherwise, along with the Pats. So there's some winnable games in there. How many more will they win? Look, I don't know. But I think Daboll's back. Obviously, Joe Shane will be back. They're going to draft a quarterback high. If you trust Daboll as this quarterback molder, give him a clean slate guy, just like he had with Josh Allen. So I think he's back, and barring something crazy happening, I'll say he's going to be back, barring something crazy happening down the stretch. The question becomes then, what does he do to address this offense? I mean, personnel. We can get to some personnel and some draft and some rebuild stuff here in a minute, but what does he do? Like, because we're talking coaching staff potential changes here. I think Thomas McGahee is out the door. He's been a cockroach on that staff. I'm not saying that, he's a pest, but one of those survive the Holocaust type things, the nuclear Holocaust type situations where like the guy's been through 3 staffs now. So I think his time is probably up. In terms of the look, what do they do with Mike Kafka? He's the play caller. Like, can you bring him back and just take away the play calling duties? You might as well just fire him if you're going to do that, right? If you're Daboll and you're going to take over the play calling next year with your job on the line, maybe you just fire him. Wink Martindale, quite frankly, he's been underwhelming. I don't get it. I don't get the hype around him. Like I've said it all season, their defense has not produced consistently enough. So do you make a change there? Maybe not. I could see that one going either way. But if you're Daboll next year, now, okay, maybe you get a couple year mulligan off of a rookie quarterback, right? Todd Bowles did not with Sam Darnold. Then again, Todd Bowles not an offensive coach, right? So that maybe cost him there, right, after Darnold's first year. Normally, you'd think like an offensive coach would get a couple years to work with a rookie quarterback. So if they draft a guy high, is Daboll safe through 2025? I mean, I think at some point you're going to have to produce some results, even though they are clearly rebuilding still. I think there's definitely a possibility that there will be changes on that offensive staff. Will that make a difference? Look, it's the Jimmies and Joes more than the X's and O's, right? So like, I don't know. I mean, unless your X's and O's guy doesn't know X from Q, like Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, like, so I think that you could definitely see a situation where Daboll calls the plays next year. So in the more immediate, they got 6 games left where they need to, maybe they get Tyrod Taylor back, but they need to show some progress and pride on defense, which is what they showed in Washington. They need to not bicker on the sideline. They didn't do that. They won a game against just a terrible team. Ron Rivera just is absolutely atrocious. What a terrible coach. So he stinks. My gosh. He'll be
hard to believe. Yeah. Hard to believe
I mean, and then what's next, by the way, at FedEx Field? Are they going to have raw sewage coming out of the showers there next week or the next game? They had freezing cold water coming out of the showers. And then I guess it stopped working. I mean, that place is just, and it's not even like it's that old, that stadium. It is. Okay, I'll find it right now. You take a guess. When was the stadium built?
98.
Great guess. Opened in September of 97. The stadium is only 26 years old. It looks like it's 66 years old.
Yep, and like the Jets at the Hall of Fame game, they didn't have showers running. You almost expect that because that's a high school football stadium that
Is a
hosts an event
million
once a
years
year.
old.
This is an NFL stadium.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But look, there's a lot of big picture things to consider here with the Giants and the Jets. Because that's what it's really about now. It's big picture. It's looking ahead. You're talking about teams that are 3-8 and 4-6. The Giants could beat the Pats this week, yeah, but the Jets aren't beating the Dolphins, right? So I think the one through line here as we talk about both of these teams, I think that's will be fascinating. Let's just talk a little bit about their offensive lines, right? So at this point, the Jets offensive line is one of the reasons why their offense is terrible. A big one. I mean, their quarterback play really, really bad, but their offensive line also really, really bad. The Jets are 29th in pass blocking in PFF. The Giants are 32nd. In terms of blocking the run, the Jets are 23rd. The Giants are 32nd. They're, I mean, so we were talking about this before we came on the air. So what's your offseason? Obviously, you got to figure out the play calling thing, your offseason checklist if you're the Jets, right? The play caller situation's got to get sorted out. You got to not let Rodgers make all the decisions about the weapons to bring in because that didn't work out.
For sure.
You got to find. We talked about the backup quarterback, whoever that'll be, right? What do you make of the line? It seems to me like they need two tackles, right? But they're good on the interior. You think?
Yeah, well, it depends on how they view Elijah Vera Tucker. I mean, we're not looking at a guy who's suffered season-ending injuries at tackle the last two times he's moved there, so they have to figure out if that's a factor. And if it's not a factor, he grades out very well at tackle. So you could slide him and make him your starting left tackle. I don't see them paying the 20 million plus that's going to require to tag Becton, especially given his injury history. And look, Becton has potential to be a nice player, but it's not like he's lived up to the dominance. Even the second half of his rookie year, I mean, teams exploited him, figured out a book on him. He is not like this consistent Pro Bowl type machine player. He's a nice, still somewhat developmental player who has seemingly taken the steps to, rein in his body and perhaps gain some durability there. But he's dealing with his first injury of the season now after missing the final three quarters against the Bills. It's an ankle injury. He's going to try to play on Friday. We'll see. I think that would help. But I just don't see the Jets, given everything that's happened, sinking another 20 million into him.
No,
20 plus million into him. So I think he's gone. And then so maybe Vera Tucker is your left tackle. Maybe you draft, and then if they have options on the interior, you bring in another center. Tippmann can play guard. He already did. He played it pretty well. He's pretty good at center too. Laken Tomlinson is the left guard. The last few years, they're kind of in contract hell with him, so I'd expect that to continue. And then you either have a right tackle or a right guard that you need to bring in as well. So there is work to be done. We'll say they've had some pretty terrible injury luck when you start looking at it, but also they were relying two of their major pieces on the line were Mekhi Becton, a guy who hadn't played a game in 2 years, and Dwayne Brown, a 38-year-old veteran who had off-season shoulder surgery. So not exactly surprising that they had some depth issues on the offensive line this year when you factor that in. So I think, yeah, it's interesting. And the big question is like, how much of their resources are they going to sink in to taking care of that problem? Or like, are they going to go for the flashy object in a Devontae Adams and give up more than they should? And then it affects their ability to address a problem that, I mean, I do think they definitely need more weapons and a better weapon. The Alan Lazard signing has been, frankly, a disaster. So yeah, they need more weapons, but they also need to protect their quarterback because it doesn't really matter if Aaron Rodgers goes down on the fourth play of the season next year.
Right, exactly. I mean, they have to protect a quarterback who is about to be 40 years old in December.
December 2nd, yep.
Right, and so they don't do that. None of it matters, right? They got to protect him, especially off the edges. You got to get better tackles. So do you draft a tackle high? Like right now, hello, Tankathon, our old friend here. 11th in the draft order for the Jets, the Giants 5th. So the Jets are creeping up into a position where they could get a really interesting offensive lineman. Let's look at Joe Douglas's draft record. Okay. So the first 2 drafts, these are the players he drafted in the first 3 rounds, the premium rounds in 2020. Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, Ashton Davis, Jabari Zuniga, 0 for 4. Right? I mean, at 2021, he drafted these guys in the first 2 rounds: Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, Elijah Moore. 1 for 3. Guy went 1.
And one of them's been injured. Yeah.
Guy went 1 for 7 in the first.
You could argue that Moore has some potential, but it has not been fulfilled. So.
He's not even on the team anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, true. I mean, they did make a trade and got a second rounder for him, but yeah, I'm with you, and that's how the Rodgers trade happened. But essentially, basically less than a non-factor because he created a scene last year on a team that was finally winning.
And, the 2022 draft, great. I mean, awesome. But what he didn't get in that draft, he got Max Mitchell, a tackle in the 4th round, but he didn't get, and he got Joe Tippmann in the 2nd round, and Carter Warren in the 4th round this year, a tackle.
This year, yeah.
And Tippmann, interior guy. So he has addressed in the top 4 rounds the offensive line, Tippmann at 43, Mac Mitchell 111, Carter Warren 120. You wonder if he takes another Vera Tucker or Becton like swing this year to try to get a difference-making tackle for, because you're not getting those guys in free agency. Like good offensive tackles are it doesn't happen. So you wonder if that's where he pulls the trigger, because the first priority is to obviously you need a backup quarterback, right? But you hope the guy never has to even play, because then you address the offensive line. The offensive line has to be addressed. Has to.
Well, and they have to, more than anything, maybe it's if it's not offensive line and it's a weapon, it has to be somebody who can contribute right away. And that's where it was puzzling what they did this year with Will McDonald at 15, because there were weapons available and they needed weapons despite, what they said about adding Mecole Hardman. That wasn't it. And obviously Lazard. So they can't do this whole best guy on the board. I mean, they just didn't need Will McDonald. It's actually created more problems. I think he has a chance to be a really good player, and maybe it will end up being the right pick in a few years, but that's not going to, really matter if they've completely squandered this opportunity.
Yes. And of course,
and there were weapons there for them to get. So that adds another dynamic of pressure for Joe Douglas.
Look at the running receivers late in the draft: Jackson Smith and Jiba, Quentin Nelson go 20 and 21, Zay Flowers 22, 20 going 22nd, and then Jordan Addison goes 23rd. Those 4 straight receivers. Of course, remember, Jet fans don't need a reminder. They traded down from 13 to 15, and guess who goes 14? Broderick Jones, offensive tackle to the Steelers. So the Jets just missed out on him there.
After a trade with the Patriots, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in terms of the Giants, obviously they have a bunch to figure out. So how do you protect? Their thing is different. Now you got to give the rookie a fighting chance, right? I don't want to come on. They're not running it back with Daniel Jones. Let's turn the page, folks. It's over. It's over. Unless they somehow go on a run here, and then they have to figure out, are they going to take the 4th best quarterback? But let's assume that what happened in Washington was a blip, and that maybe they win one more game the rest of the year or something like that. I think that, obviously Andrew Thomas, your foundational left tackle, Justin Pugh is not going to be around next year. Ben Bredesen, Mark Lewinsky's gone too as a guard. In terms of the center, obviously John Michael Schmitz, he's going to be around. He was a 2nd round pick this year. Jury's still out on him. And Bredesen is, by the way, a pending free agent. He's an interesting player. I mean, he's still young. He's 25, and I think it's certainly possible they could bring him back. But he's not great. The big problem here is that, again, I've said this a billion times, Joe Shane drafted a right tackle last year in Evan Neal, who is terrible, and he can't even stay healthy. So that's a big problem. I mean, how much hope are you going to pin on Evan Neal as being a right tackle who's able to, number 1, stay upright, number 2, be functional? So Schmitz and Thomas are back. other than that, I think the Giants could be looking at having 3 new starters. Maybe Bredesen comes back, but one of their guards will be new. Maybe they have a new starting right tackle, maybe not. But how do you depend on Neal? Like, how do you depend on the guy? They obviously need to get weapons. And that's why everyone's saying, look, maybe they could take Marvin Harrison if he's available at the top of the draft, trade back into the bottom of the first round with the extra ammo they have from the Leonard Williams trade, the extra second round pick, and get a quarterback there. That's a little bit risky. I think maybe you take the quarterback when you can get him and try to take a receiver later. So you can't have everything. You can't have everything. You can't have you're not getting Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison. It's not happening. So I think that's where the Giants have to figure out where, what are the priorities here in terms of protecting and giving playmakers to this young quarterback, because, they talked about not giving a chance to Daniel Jones, which I think, okay, so you remembered all the chatter from there. Oh, we didn't give this guy a chance. We did everything we possibly could to screw him up by changing coaches and changing play callers. That to me is why Dable's probably safe through 2025. I think that's an interesting story I might have to address, because, why would you draft a quarterback and then get rid of his offensive coach after 1 year? Obviously everyone knows Caleb Williams, Drake May, the top 2 quarterbacks. Then you're looking at Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix. The Giants have to figure out, like, okay, if they miss on Williams and May, what do they do? Is it the end of the world? Because at this point, the top of the draft is Bears, Cardinals, Pats, Bears, Giants. 3 teams in front of the Giants in the first 4 picks, and all 3 of them could take a quarterback. Really, all that matters is the Giants. So the Giants might wind up with a 3rd or 4th pick in terms of the preference of the quarterbacks, but historically that hasn't mattered. Like, okay, so like I did something for this on today, right? Like, it's amazing, Andy, since 2013, if you go back to the 2013 draft, how few quarterbacks have become like really, really good players. There's not many. I mean, people can go ahead and read the story, but like, so Dak Prescott went 4th round in 2016 in the same year that Goff and Wentz went 1, Paxton Lynch 26, and Hackenberg in round 2. 2017 is the prime example. Mitch Trubisky, total bust at 2nd. Then Mahomes and Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson 10 and 12. So that's a perfect example of how you don't always have to get the top guy. 2018, Mayfield 1, Darnold 3, Rosen 10. Oh, by the way, Josh Allen 7 and Lamar Jackson 32. So you never know, right?
Yeah, it is, I think in some ways, I think we mentioned this last week, that sometimes going that high in the draft puts so much pressure on these guys, and there's almost a benefit. And then, more importantly, the quarterback evaluation business is a crapshoot. And really, it's not just quarterback. It's a lot of, if you start looking at the draft and the decisions people make and all the examples, it's whatever NFL executives are doing in terms of talent evaluation. It is not an exact science at all, because just look at how many every team passed on Tom Brady, but even more recently than that, every team passed on Lamar Jackson. I think every team passed on Jalen Hurts. So it's
there's another
there
one.
Is there is. Yep, there is. There is an element of luck, because if the Eagles, if they thought Jalen Hurts was that good, they're not letting him drop to 53. So that is fascinating to me, and it's like kind of like this secret that nobody wants to ever talk about. I mean, I guess I understand it, because what are you going to say? Like, as an executive, you invest all these resources in getting these things right. Yeah, and ultimately, we have no freaking idea, because they don't have a better idea than you or me or anybody. So, because any one of us could have, put together a draft that's better than, drafted a quarterback that was better than all those names you've mentioned. Any one of us could have made those picks, is what I'm trying to say. So it's a mess. Yeah, it's really interesting, and you can't rely on, there's so few can't miss prospects, and like even Trevor Lawrence, who is that, I think he's going to ultimately be fine given everything we've seen, but it hasn't been great so far. But that also shows how it's changed in terms of pressure too, because Trevor Lawrence, everybody is kind of dunking on him, saying he's not good. And if you look at the opening years of his career next to a Peyton Manning or whatever, or certainly an Eli, he grades out pretty favorably. So,
I mean, Joe Douglas would cut off his left hand to have Trevor Lawrence.
Well, oh my God, and the Jets would be, in the hunt in the AFC for real. So, and they wouldn't have had to, they wouldn't have Nathaniel Hackett call the play. So, but that's a story for another day. I will say, I'm sure Jets fans enjoyed seeing Braden Mann with a couple nice punts on Monday night.
Braden Mann,
who had obviously a huge role and a huge tackle that ended up making sure that Trevor Lawrence didn't go to the Jets. So, just a nice little reminder for Jets fans who can't have nice things.
One of the biggest upsets in the history of the NFL. We talked about it last time we were on here. So the Rams game late 2020. So in terms of just building for these teams, the most interesting in-house free agent for either team by far is Saquon Barkley. And I wrote something about this for tomorrow. Just curious to hear your thoughts on this. In my mind, I mean, so by the way, he has been playing really well lately. It's kind of has gone overlooked because of how bad their offense have been and how dysfunctional they've been overall. But if you look at the numbers, and I'll call this story up right now so I can get these right. Since he returned, actually, if you count even his first two games, you're talking about total yards now, rushing and receiving. Total yards, he's averaging 101.6 total yards a game this season. These are his numbers since he returned. Total yards.
My goodness.
98, 118, 128, 113, 61 in the dud against Dallas, and then 140 last week in Washington and got 2 touchdowns. So 101 total yards a game is really good, right? So last year his number was 103 total yards a game. As a rookie, it was really high, 126. So he's playing almost and now the touchdowns aren't there, right? So he only has 5 touchdowns. Last year he had I think it was 10. It's somewhere in the story. So the numbers are, pretty darn impressive, especially for a guy who missed 3 games with a high ankle sprain, then hit the ground running. It didn't
to add one thing real quick. You just said they have the worst run blocking offensive line in the NFL too. I mean,
a lot of it is him.
It's insane that he's this good.
And he's a really good player, not taking anything away from him. And I think he's kind of put these durability questions to bed because in 2019, he did not come back well from the high ankle sprain. It really impacted him. Now, he didn't have a bad year that year. I mean, he still averaged 110 total yards a game and scored 8 touchdowns in 13 games, total touchdowns in 2019, despite having the high ankle sprain week 3 and it limiting him. So he was still a pretty good year. Now, he's really put those durability questions to bed because everyone was saying, high ankle sprain, he'll be out a while. And when he does come back, he won't be the same. Well, he wasn't out a while. And when he did come back, he was fine, like behind, as you said, a bad offensive line. So to me, look, he's a fascinating player. And quite frankly, if you're him, you are running for paychecks the rest of the way in terms of like what you got coming up next year. But the question becomes, like, if you're Joe Shane, does it make sense to throw big money at a 27-year-old running back? Yes, he's going into year 7 next year, 27 years old. Yes, will have theoretically finished this year strong. Will have played a great year in 2022, and he was really good in Minnesota in the playoff game. But when you're trying to allocate resources around around a high draft pick quarterback, right? I don't know, like how do you balance that type of move, spending big money on a running back when you presumably are far away from a Super Bowl?
Yeah, it seems like it's definitely a double-edged sword because, man, could you imagine having that guy as a young quarterback and how much it would help? But there's no way Saquon's going to be happy if can they tag him again, or is that
they could for $12 million, but
so there's no way he's going to be happy, and you're leading to then a really potentially ugly situation.
I don't think they'll tag him.
Yeah, and Saquon already seems to have pretty clearly gotten the message from the Giants that they don't want to pay him. So you'd think he's ready to move on. I mean, it just seems to make, given all of what it's going to cost to keep him, given, like you said, the holes that they have, it seems like this is the end for Saquon in a Giants uniform. And if I were another team, a real contender, you should be trying to jump all over this guy because it's not easy, man. Like, to do what he's doing with that offensive line. Look at Breece Hall is a really talented guy. I mean, aside from a few long runs, he's done nothing this year. I don't think, he still has the speed and explosiveness. We've seen it with the long runs. The ACL recovery is still a factor somewhat, but I mean, it's very rare to have a running back this productive behind such a terrible offensive line, and I think smart GMs, and to be doing it in a situation where it's less than ideal in terms of not getting the financial rewards he wanted, not being on a team that is as competitive as he wanted,
I mean, bad
and
quarterback
like you said, the
situation,
injury, yeah,
but they know you're the
the
focus
injuries,
too. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, all of this, if I'm a team, a contending team that's looking to take the next step, like, yeah, you're looking at Saquon. Like if you're imagine the Lions offense with Saquon, or I know they have Gibbs, but they're different style runners. I think, you could talk about developing identity behind a quarterback you maybe have some questions about. Um, and you could go down the line. The Chiefs. Imagine if the Chiefs were able to get Saquon, what he would bring. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it's the end. A long-winded way of saying I feel like it's the end for him in a Giants uniform. I think it does make sense for both sides because they have to address the offensive line. Because what's the point with the new quarterback if you don't?
You have to prioritize if you're Joe Shane, and the priority should be offensive line and outside receiver, and you can figure it out at running back in terms of drafting a guy and going the route they should have gone all along. Take a mid-round pick and build around him. Like it's what good teams, smart teams do, not teams run stupidly by Dave Gettleman, So, but look, Saquon Barkley has been, he's never going to live up to the number 2 overall pick, and he hasn't. And that pick set the Giants back. Yes. But it also can be true that he's been a very good player for them amid some tough circumstances. And in this season, this year, where their quarterback situation is a mess and everyone knows he's going to get the ball and he's still producing. So to me, giving a big money contract to a running back who's entering year 7, who's 27 years old, who's still pretty darn good, very good, is a win now move for a win now team. And the Giants are not going to be that next year. They're not. Okay. So like that was, this Shane has been playing this as like kind of a soft rebuild all along. It's not like they made a lot of, look, their biggest signing, they have money to spend in free agency this year. Their biggest signing was Bobby Okereke, who's been a very good middle linebacker. But other than that, they did not go out and take like enormous swings. So like, they're not in a situation like the Jets are for next year, where the Jets have this like very, very small window with a great defense and an aging great quarterback, and they've got to do everything possible to seize upon that window. And when you're drafting a quarterback high, that first year is almost like, if the kid can do what CJ Stroud's doing, and now what are the Texans? What is their record? 6-5, right?
I think so.
So they're having a shockingly good year, right? And it's not like, and they might even be dreaming of a playoff berth. But if it doesn't happen, they're 6-4. If it doesn't happen, then, that's still a great year because the kid's been productive. And that's all you're looking for out of the first year. You're looking for the guy to not look lost, to look productive. And it's gravy if he's amazing. So,
yeah.
And who knows, maybe it winds up being fool's gold, like it was with Carson Wentz, who just flamed out, and was kind of a turd, honestly. So that didn't help him. So, look, I think that all that adds up to as the same thing we've been saying to Saquon Barkley, probably gone. One thing I wanted to go ahead.
Well, just for the Jets, their most interesting pending free agent is Bryce Huff, and it's not easy. I mean, it is an easy decision. Like they're going to give him money, but it's going to make things tight in terms of allocating resources. I'm sure they'll find a way to, factor it, spread the money, but they got to pay him because he's been not only their most productive pass rusher, but one of the best in the league in terms of getting the quarterback. And then that makes it harder for you to take care of all the other stuff you need to take care of. And I think, if you're looking, his numbers are similar to John Franklin Myers' contract, which I'm pulling up right now because I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was, but that's what you're going to be looking at as a floor. His numbers, Franklin Myers actually had better numbers earlier in his career, was a little bit younger when the Jets signed him, but I just think he's never done what Huff did, which is like with defenses or opposing offenses, knowing what what he's capable of and game planning against him, he's still getting it done. And that's going to probably make him more expensive for the Jets. And the contract he signed before was he restructured it, so it's a little hard for me to figure it out. But it was like it was a 4-year extension worth $55 million. So you're looking probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 and 60 for Bryce Huff, and that's going to complicate the things they need to do on the offensive line and the weapons, at least one more weapon that they need to find for Aaron Rodgers.
And speaking, you led me right into what I was going to ask you before you made that last point. Okay, so Davante Adams, right? So he signed a 5-year contract, $140 million, leading into last season, 2022. Next year, he's got a $16.8 million salary. But the Raiders, if they trade him, would still have to eat like 3 years worth of prorated signing bonus money. So the dead money is pretty high. I mean, the dead money is $23.5 million. And if they keep him, his cap number is 25 and then of course with the Jets, they would just take on the salary, which is 16.8, right? So to me, all that adds up to, and the guy's a really, really good player. He's getting older. He's 31. What do you think the Raiders would want for him? And how the Jets could fit him under their cap, but how in the world could the Jets, who don't have a 2nd round pick next year, they have a 1st round pick, they have a 3rd round pick, they have 2 4th round picks, and who cares about the rest of the draft? But so yeah, what could the Jets could give? What, a 2nd rounder in 2025? Would the Raiders be okay with that, or what?
You think they're going to need the 3rd rounder this year, and then if it wasn't the salary considerations you were talking about, I think that and a 5th rounder or something would be enough. But like, given some of the other trades we've seen. But when you start throwing that in there, it really feels like it's got to be like something more, right? Like,
yeah, because if the Raiders,
because the Jets are also, the Jets are already projecting like how badly they want this guy, which was
they're basically tampering. They're basically tampering. They're telling everybody under the sun.
It's not the right move for them to get this guy for all the reasons. They shouldn't be. They can't. They don't. They're not in a position to spend, because they are going to have to in 2025 probably, or sooner, find a quarterback who's not Aaron Rodgers. And they can't draft a quarterback in the 1st round this year because of Aaron Rodgers, no matter how bad it gets.
It would be a 1 year. He has no guaranteed salary past 2024. His salary, but so look, like it's costly.
What I'm saying is they can't just sink every single resource into the season and without like some sort of eye toward the future. So
they have to, right?
They do. Yeah, they do. I'm just saying, in an ideal world, they would draft a quarterback in this draft. They're not going to. So they don't need to get Davante Adams. They already have a pretty good receiver in Garrett Wilson. Like they should just pay for a receiver like Mike Evans. Is my point. Like, it just doesn't make sense
to pay
when you have to pay and give up capital when you have to address some of this stuff at low, even for next year, at low options, and to give yourself some sort of like, because you still do have Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, who will be on their 4th year of their rookie contracts in 2025. Like, I'm just saying, just because if it doesn't work out with Aaron Rodgers doesn't mean you have to tear the whole thing down right away. You still have
will. I mean, if it doesn't work out with Aaron Rodgers, they're sunk for 5 years. They're going to be terrible. The bottom line is they're sold.
Yeah, you're probably right.
To be good.
They didn't give up that much draft capital for Rodgers, but like the things they've done since it's hard. It's going to be hard to come back. But I still think you have to kind of manage it. It's the point being, they can't just give up draft capital and all of this, salary to a guy who's that old. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't win big next year, out the door, you're in the breadline. So, what does he care if the Jets are terrible after he's gone?
Yeah, you're right, and that's another flaw of the whole situation and scenario, is that it's these guys don't end up doing what's best for the franchise long term, and because they're under pressure to keep their jobs, and that's something the Jets have been victimized by. Look at Mike McCagnon's last offseason. So it's not a good situation. But I think like ultimately the best thing, because the Jets have to fill the holes on the offensive line, and they have to bring in a weapon. They reduce their avenues to do that even for next year if they're spending draft capital on Davante Adams. and paying him an exorbitant salary. It just and now you're talking about a receiver who's in his, they're at 32. There's a high chance of a drop off. So it
Yeah,
just none of
and
that
Evans is
makes
the same age.
sense.
Evans is basically
Yeah.
the same age, a year younger, right? So
Yeah.
why, as you said, not just go sign Mike Evans? Okay, hey, that's totally fair because look, if you trade away the third round pick next year, the Jets have one first round pick, nothing in round 2 because they traded it to the Packers, nothing. They would theoretically in this case have nothing in round 3. They would have nothing in round 5. Because who knows, who cares? But they would have two. They would have 2 picks in the 4th round. Okay, so that would be Joe Douglas would have like one shot to get one player in the 1st round to do something to like help protect Aaron Rodgers, or you can hang on to that 3rd round pick and maybe you get a productive player there.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, my problem is I just have already moved on from the idea of this team winning a Super Bowl. But it just seems so unrealistic at this point with Rodgers coming back. What is he going to look like after the Achilles? All of the question marks. It just seems like it's not.
But that's what they have
Faded.
to.
They're just, yeah. You're right. You're right. But
That
again,
has
I
to be
still think that has to be the goal. But going all in on Adams and hurting your resources for next year is not the answer in my
Well, you
opinion.
could split. I think maybe they split the difference. Maybe they pay Mike Evans. I don't even know if that's the right use of split the difference, whatever. But maybe they pay Mike Adam or Mike Evans, and yeah, maybe they mash the 2 guys together and make a guy named Mike Adams. New Jersey from Patterson. Patterson guys, a longtime NFL DB. But maybe they pay Mike Evans, keep the pick, and use that pick on an offensive lineman, someone who can block.
An offensive lineman
Novel
or
concept.
yeah, it's not. Look, they're not in a good situation. Is the point, and it's a damn shame. And that's again why I've been so harsh on them for. This is my opinion going into the season that it was insane to make Zach Wilson your backup, and now you've wasted another year of good defense, wasted a year of Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, and Brees Hall, and then you're gonna do it again next year. It looks like so. It's rough stuff to be a Jets fan right now. They're not in a good situation, and everything has to go right with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's really their only hope is for Aaron Rodgers to come back, be Aaron Rodgers, and everything else to kind of fall their way next year. That seems like a tall order.
It's a lot. It's asking a lot in the more immediate in terms of Aaron Rodgers. He wants to come back to practice, and why not come? Just if he can practice, he's clear to practice. At least practice. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean he's gonna. That doesn't. Then they could lose out, and they could say, you know what, we're not going to clear you. But then he'll always be able to say, I could have played.
Yeah, and I was trying to motivate the team, and
like
I'm way ahead of the common timeline.
Yeah, Uncle Rico.
Congratulations.
Type stuff. I could have thrown that ball over the mountain. So
yeah, he could have not snapped his Achilles 4 plays in the season, and they've
December
just won
2nd
Super Bowl, right?
Not that far away. That's a week and a half away where he could potentially be back to practice. I mean,
his 40th birthday. Yep.
That's a Saturday, so obviously he's not coming back this week or the next week. Probably not next week to practice, but maybe the following week. So the Jets will have had two more games between now and then. Miami, and Atlanta. Let's assume they go 0-2. They're 4-8. Let them come back to practice, but they're not going to be in the playoff race at that point. You probably need to win 10 games to make the playoffs, which means a 6-1 finish for the Jets. It's not happening. They're not finishing 6-1. They're not finishing 5-2. The end. So the Aaron Rodgers stuff will wait till next year, obviously. So in terms of the Giants quarterback, rather, they are going to roll obviously with Tommy DeVito this week against Patriots because Tyrod Taylor can't come back from IR until after the bye. So Giants have Patriots bye, Packers. And I guess technically Tyrod Taylor could come back against the Packers. We'll see if he does. But we'll wrap it up with picks. But I know you had a good idea. It's Thanksgiving. Hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving, of course, in a couple of days. The one guy who will get that we know for sure will get to spend Thanksgiving at home among these two teams, truly at his home with his parents, is Tommy DeVito, who lives at home with his parents in Cedar Grove.
Laundry service, baby.
Yeah, you said what do you think think's on the table at Tommy DeVito's Thanksgiving at home?
I have an interesting background as I'm half Italian and half Puerto Rican. So we've had we have interesting. I mean, I would expect there to be some pasta for sure. Now, like, this is the unconventional stuff. Obviously, you're gonna have the staples, and they're gonna do it well. But I think you'll see some pasta, some meatballs, um, maybe like a lasagna, something like that. I don't know. We would always have some sort of meatball, and actually baked ziti was in my household what we had growing up, and it was excellent in terms of the non-traditional Thanksgiving. And then arroz con pollo, rice and beans, or chicken, rice and beans. That arroz con pollo is chicken and rice, but we'd throw in the beans there for my abuela, and it was always excellent. And then, all the staples. We were a stuffing house. I feel like there's going to be some stuffing over there.
Oh, with the
I'm not
Italian
an expert on
sausage.
desserts. Yeah,
It's
yeah. I'm
only
not.
about is the sweet Italian sausage or the spicy
Oh
Italian.
yeah, that too. Yeah, we weren't big on the Italian sausage, but that makes sense too. Yeah. So what do you think? What
Yeah,
break it
no,
down
look,
for
I
me?
mean, he had a great point the other day. He was talking about it was Steve Politi, our columnist, who does awesome job at everything, and did a really fun and good column on Tommy DeVito leading up to the Washington game. And um, Tommy was talking about the chicken parm with vodka sauce. And I am not Italian, but we, obviously live in New Jersey. There's plenty of great Italian places around here. I will say before before anyone even like, I'm not even claiming to have invented this taste at all, but because it's on the menu, these things, drunken chicken parm. It's your chicken parm with vodka sauce instead of marinara sauce. It's on the menu. It's not like it's a special thing you have to order. So I remember when we moved to where I live now, we would we started to order that, and then on our margarita pizzas we'd order the vodka sauce instead of the marinara sauce. And I'm gonna be honest, he's right. I think it's really good. It doesn't have sometimes a marinara can be a little bit like heartburny, especially if you're older, like
Right.
like the vodka
Oh
sauce.
yeah.
If it's a nicely done vodka sauce, Tommy DeVito is right. Like a vodka sauce chicken parm is excellent. Now, regular chicken parm is too, and so is a regular margarita pizza. But try it if you haven't. The vodka sauce. It's not an insane thing that he's making up. It's like on the menu all across New Jersey. It's not like he has invented the special order. Like I said, I'm not even Italian. I look at it on the menu. Oh, drunken chicken parm. But what is that? We look because it's got an interesting name. Oh, the vodka sauce. Duh, of course. Haha, joke there. But all right, get that. And it's really good. We get it every single time we order from our pizza place. Every time. And so the place you order from is fine. It's whatever. It's not great, but yeah, I'm sure his mom makes a mean vodka sauce, so I would guess a little vodka sauce on the menu with the maybe some vodka sauce chicken parm with those cutlets. I guess he likes his chicken cutlets pounded thin like paper. I don't know, man.
Ooh, that's good. My
Don't you
great
want a
uncle
little
used to do that.
protein in your meat? Like, or what does he got? Is he eating
Just
fried
gotta
air? What is that?
just gotta add some more chicken to it. That's all. Just have more than one serving. But yeah, I
Yeah.
love the same. My great uncle, who was the second generation, really first generation immigrant, he did the whole thing with you'd get the chicken cutlets, and then he had I'm not well versed on kitchen stuff, and I'm gonna expose myself at this point. But the hammer, the thing,
Yeah, that mallet, the
yeah,
meat.
the mallet, the meat tenderizer, I think is the word.
That's the right
Um,
word.
yeah. So he would go and do that, and it was so. And then he'd add some spicy red sauce. Oh man, it was good. It was excellent. So I learned how to do that. I just haven't done it in a long time, and I gotta next time I'm down in Florida visiting the parents, I'll have to get my mom to help me to pull that recipe back together.
Yeah. So that's
Now I'm hungry, Daryl. Damn.
I was gonna say there it is. Our guesses, and less interestingly, beyond our predictions for what Tommy DeVito will have for Thanksgiving, and maybe we gave you guys some culinary ideas there. Let's get real quick for what it's worth, and we're gonna be getting have to I guess say it every week for what it's worth. Our picks for this week's game. I'll start with the Giants. Sunday afternoon, 1:00, against the Bill Belichick Patriots, who probably soon will not be Bill Belichick's Patriots. And it appears to be coming to an end for BB in New England. Yeah, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi. I mean, good grief. What a mess of a situation. It's not like he can hide behind the GM. He is the GM. He picked Mac Jones. Didn't work out so well. Again, It's a Jimmy's and Joe's game. We've said it before. Like, if you don't have talented players, it doesn't matter how good of a coach you are. And so, will the Giants win? No, I don't think they're going to win, because I don't see a way that Tommy DeVito will beat a Bill Belichick defense. I think a low scoring loss for the Giants. Let's call it 17-10 Patriots. What do you got for Black Friday, 3:00? Dolphins at
Yeah. 3:00 Friday game, not your typical NFL. This has got to be the first scheduled Friday NFL game in history. You would think so. But yeah. And I will say on the game, if the Giants do win, man, that would be something in terms of what happens with Bill Belichick in the next 10 days or whatever. But
he toast, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to think. But I mean, it's just the whole thing is weird because he did win like a bunch of Super Bowls. So you would think if he wants to keep coaching somewhere, it won't be over for him, but maybe without the GM role, but we'll see. I'm sure that they'll beat the Jets the last week of the season. Look, I'm avoiding because I don't really want to talk about this game. I don't but Tim Boyle is going to play better than Zach Wilson. That's my bold prediction. So the Jets are going to score 13 points. Dolphins are going to score 23, and that's going to be your final. It's not going to be that close, but I think the Jets defense will play well. I think they'll set the Jets offense up for a touchdown. So it'll be back-to-back games with touchdowns for the Jets offense, which is, man, they're really heating up.
13?
Yeah, 23 to 13.
Boyle. Okay, so let's
couple field goals. Like, the defense is going to set him up. I think he's not good, man, but he can't be worse than Zach Wilson has been.
Terrible. He's awful.
He's going to get he understands the Hackett offense. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to steal from Kevin Clark, who was making fun of the Jets on the Around the Horn of some pre-show tweet I saw yesterday. But yeah, look, nothing ever makes sense. That came back to bite me when I picked the Jets to win last week. But the Dolphins aren't as good as everybody says they are. They're a lot better than the Jets. Their defense is a little vulnerable, but I think the Jets defense will hold their own, keep it tight, maybe set the offense up for a score. But yeah, I do think I'm not saying it makes sense. I just come to predict. I come to the unforeseeable is what usually happens with the Jets, or something stupid, something annoyingly stupid.
Hey,
so they'll play well.
The home games for the Jets, this is the first 3 straight home games. If this thing starts to spiral, okay, so they obviously, you saw some grumbling with that loss to the Chargers earlier this month. That was coming off the gift win against the Jets, which was coming off the big win over the Eagles. So if the Jet fan was feeling good coming out of the Giant game, and then, okay, you lose to the Chargers, obviously a super ugly, a lot of groans, but then they lost in Vegas, lost in Buffalo. Now 3 straight home games. If this thing starts to snowball in a bad way, when do the fire Salah chants start coming out? I mean, are you talking halftime of the Falcon game if they're down like 17-0 against
dude.
Desmond,
I don't think you understand how upset this fan base is. You're talking first quarter of this game.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I mean,
first quarter of this weekend, if any Jets fans are there.
Standalone,
which would be, well, hey, look, it's not like they haven't done it on Amazon before. Had a nightmare game.
It's not really national TV, yeah.
So the last time they had a game on Prime, it was a public shaming of Zach Wilson, and it will be just as bad for Robert Saleh and the offense and Nathaniel Hackett if they come out and lay an egg. And
Hackett, fire Saleh, the chance will be coming.
Yeah, I think it'll be. I mean, I'm telling you, fans are. Like they understand that the season is over.
They've not forgotten that the head coach of the Jets last year threatened to asphyxiate them with receipts to shove
everyone, all the people,
everyone on the planet. He was going to shove the receipts down the throat of every living human alive, on the East Coast or whatever. So look, okay, so standalone game. Everyone who's not an insane person, why? By the way. What are you doing shopping at a brick and mortar store? Okay, do your shopping online. What are you doing
Well,
going out?
small business, Daryl. Small business.
Why
Come on.
are you leaving the house on? Well, I get. Look, there we go.
Some of the small businesses. Yeah, but I'm with you. You can also find small businesses
I
online.
prefer to give my money to
But
Jeff Bezos and only Jeff Bezos.
yes.
No, I'm being sarcastic. But look,
Oh, yes, me too.
but why
I'm
would
kidding.
you?
I just like convenience. That's all.
You got many days to go shopping. Don't leave a general 1 mile radius of your house on Black Friday. Just sit at
Yeah.
home, relax.
Actually, the Jets game will be entertaining.
You don't even have
I
to
don't know
watch
if,
the Jet game.
yeah.
Go watch, Nebraska, Colorado. They still play on Black Friday, whatever it is. The Cordell Stewart game or whatever. That was Black Friday. I can't remember, but
I think so. Yeah,
so look,
and then
but a
come to
lot of people are going to
NJ.com.
watch. A lot of people are going to
Yeah.
watch,
Just
right?
watch for Al Michaels. Yeah, I think a lot of people watch. Look, and that's the other interesting thing here is like, if I'm a Jets fan, like I'm not showing up. Like I want to send. If you want to send a message to this team, that's how you send the message. And there's a there's a lot of frustration for a lot of different reasons, and it's something I'm going to get into in the next couple of weeks. But one of them is the Jets raising season ticket prices and requiring a deposit earlier than ever before, which was November 15th. So there are a lot of pissed off fans, and for good reason. And it's very, very interesting. And the product that they're going to have on the field for the rest of the season, it's just, yeah, it's not a good situation.
People are not willing. I mean, these fans have waited half a century for a Super Bowl. They're not saying, you know what, whatever. We're cool with Tim Boyle going out there and being terrible. We're just not going to. We're gonna be fine with it. So yeah, you're right. There are going to be some angry people there on Friday, presuming the results are what we think they're going to be. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. Al Michaels, you can bet on a lot of snide and snarky comments from him. I love how like he's getting grouchier with age, and I actually love it. So tells it
That
like it
should be.
and you'll hear some huffing, just some sighs and chuckling from that booth on Friday. So yeah,
Looking forward to his call, Tim Boyle's 6th touchdown pass.
yeah, there you go.
Because remember, Mike White against the Bengals, that would be about as unlikely. I mean, this would be even more unlikely, let's be honest. But anyway,
yeah. All right.
It'll be fun.
Thanks everybody for listening. Be sure to check out NJ.com/Giants, NJ.com/Jets for all of our stuff. Like, rate, review, subscribe, and all your favorite podcasting platforms. Everybody have a good rest of your week. And thanks again, as always, for tuning in. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back with you all next week to assess the damage or something slightly better than that. Okay, we'll talk to you guys soon.